Hello and welcome back. This has been probably my most requested video, so today we're going to jump into how to dominate co-op. And just as a disclaimer, I play co-op pretty casually with my friends on the weekend, and we've won every single run, and without exception, every single run has just devolved into us racing to be the one to one-shot the boss first, so who can play their cards faster. And it's been a lot of fun, but it's been significantly easier than the single player version. But a lot of people seem to be having a little bit of trouble, so if that's you, hopefully this video can get you to where you're, doing massive damage on the enemies, because co-op is very, very fun. The main thing that I think you need to consider when you're playing co-op is how does your play impact your team, and do some math on like the net benefit of what actions you're taking. So just a couple examples, like if you play lethality, in single player, it's a 50% damage increase, but in multiplayer, if you're one of 3 players, this is only like a 16% damage increase because you're boosting your damage, you're doing nothing to your teammates. If you compare that to just vulnerable, this is a 50% net damage increase for everybody. So in 3 player, this is significantly stronger than playing lethality, whereas in single player, playing lethality is a 50% damage increase, the same as giving something vulnerable. Another example, like if you just play a block card, this blocks for 8 total across your team. But if you give an enemy weak, this could be 24 or more total block across 3 players. Like if these enemy is attacking for 20 and you make it weak, it's attacking for like 12 now. That basically decreases like 8 incoming damage across 3 players, which is just so much more net value for the team because you're basically getting like 24 block worth of value out of 0 energy. And just as a last example, Piercing Wail is like 1 energy, basically full block for the whole team, because enemy losing 6 strength is like giving everyone on your team 6 block. If it's a multi-hit attack, this is ridiculous. If there are multiple enemies, this is like 1 energy, give everyone on your team 18 block or more. So by focusing on these high value cards for the team, you're able to scale with the combats, because the enemies have more than like, if you're doing 3 player, they're going to have more than 3 times your health, but the damage doesn't scale up. So if you can scale up your block capabilities by playing cards like Go for the Eyes and Piercing Wail, you have room to do other things. So the first rule of multiplayer is just the enemy should just always be vulnerable and weak for the entire combat. That's your job. Take the status cards when you get them. And if you find yourself on turns where they don't have statuses, that's a sign to you that in the future runs, or even in the current run, take more statuses. You can just reliably have them every single turn of the fight. It's an easy way to just improve your total damage output by 50% and decrease how much block everybody needs. This is like the first step of multiplayer is this. The next lesson is, in general, the damage of the enemies do not scale up in multiplayer. So you just need less block, because if everything's weak, you're taking 25% less damage anyway. And then there are plenty of cards that just quote unquote block for everyone. Basically decreasing the strength of the enemy means that nobody on your team has to block that turn. And so these two combined means the block solution is less important in multiplayer than it is in single player, because you can have other players blocking for you, or you can block for other players. And with this means there's more room for scaling. You can take these situational powers that normally in single player, it's hard to fit a do nothing card into your deck because you have to take a turn off to play it. But because you can distribute block along multiple players, the opportunity cost of doing this is much lower. And so this is how you can scale to get more powerful. Just as an example, if I play Echo Form on turn 1, but my teammate Sarah plays Uppercut, applies Weak, and then my teammate Bob plays Enfeebling Touch, I might be taking like 4 damage. But that's not that bad compared to what could have been maybe 20 damage with an Echo Form. And then Enfeebling Touch off of Bob is helping Sarah block so she can establish a Vicious. The Weaken off Uppercut is helping Bob block so he can play his 2 powers. So we've all collectively benefited so much from these cards, and that's allowed us to play our setup cards so that we can start scaling much, much harder. Just another example, if I play like Null and Beam Cell, I apply Weak and Vulnerable, then there's more room for like Sarah to just play Pyre and a Taunt, and Bob to just play 1 Bach and like a big attack. And so, over the course of the run, you're going to trade off who's playing scaling cards, who's playing debuffs, and you got to communicate with your team about this. But like, I took advantage of them playing cards to help me so I could establish Echo Form. And then because now I have an Echo form, I can take the time to apply debuff so they can take their turn to play big powers. And you do this back and forth so you can all scale collectively, taking advantage of the decreased block requirements of multiplayer. So we've figured out how to block. We know we should scale, but how do we scale? The thing to notice is that middling damage matters a lot less in multiplayer, and scaling potential matters a lot more. And the other thing to look at is with 2 or more players, the odds are that at least 1 or 2 people are going to pop off, and that's really the goal of multiplayer. It's not like we're going to play 6 Defiles to do 60 damage to the boss, right? It's someone's going to scale really hard, and that person is going to do like 700 damage to the boss. And if multiple people scale, that's great. Then then you all just one-shot the boss. This is my lived experience. Like, we all just scale so hard that we're all just racing to beat the boss. Not every run's going to be like that, especially as you get to the higher ascensions. I think you're going to have more specialized gameplay, like someone focuses on debuffs, someone focuses on doing damage, but you can distribute this because not every single person needs to do damage and not every single person needs to block, right? You can have someone who all of the cards in their deck are just like this. They're the block person. And then you can have someone else who just has a bunch of powers and they scale and someone else does debuffs. It's okay to do that as long as your team collectively can handle the combats. So just a few examples of cards that do have scaling potential to one-shot a boss. The Ironclad, like Rupture, you can get like 100 strength. Specifically, Rupture plus Tear Asunder is such an easy way to one-shot bosses. So if you come across these cards, take them. Same with Ashen Strike. If you can exhaust a bunch, this can do like 200 to 300 damage. Dominate is probably the best card on the character. You should be stacking Vulnerable anyway. So Dominate, if you have multiple Ironclads, is so broken. But even on its own, if you're stacking Vulnerable, someone else's, this can easily provide 40 to 50 strength. On the Regent, the one-shot build is really fun on the Regent. I have a guide. For all of these characters, I have guides talking about how to scale and stuff. This is just a quick highlight, but like Radiate plus a bunch of Star plus Arsenal get strength, one-shot them is very strong. You can do stuff with Heavenly Drill if you can get a bunch of energy. You can Forge, you can do like the multi-hit sword build. There's a lot of ways to scale on the Regent. The Silent Nightmare in particular is kind of messed up in multiplayer because you can clone your powers or like clone a Knife Trap or Corrosive Wave and just set up this absurd combo to take down bosses. So Nightmare is fun. Envenom with Shivs is quite good. Corrosive Wave with card draw, you could just stack hundreds of poison. Knife Trap if you have a lot of Shivs. A lot of ways to scale on the Silent. Necrobinder as well, you can stack Doom. If you have multiple players as Necrobinder, the Doom scaling no escape is just ridiculous. But even on its own, like this can let you scale if you're strong enough. Squeeze, sometimes if you can clone it, does a lot. But even on its own, you can like Transfigure Squeeze, do a ton of damage. Ethereal cards, if you can get pull from below to hit like 20 times, it's quite good. So there's a lot of ways to do Necrobinder. And then Defect. Defect is like the scaling character because you just play creative AI and then eventually you'll get enough powers to kill them. Voltaic is exponential or quadratic scaling, I think. It's also very good. So there's a lot of ways for Defect to scale. And these are just a few examples. There's plenty more ways to build in scaling, but this is kind of what I'm talking about. You don't want to take cards that are like, oh, I'll do 15 damage to kill the boss. You want to be thinking from square one, how can I, on my own, set it up so I could one-shot the 1,500 health boss? And if everyone is doing that, someone eventually will scale strong enough where they can handle almost all the damage. And in many cases, multiple people will, and that's where your damage comes from. So, in summary, always have weaken vuln on the enemies essentially the entire run. And use the weaken strength drops to supplement your block. So you're going to need less block in your deck in Acts 2 and 3. Even in Act 1, but more so Act 2 and 3 than you would in a single player game. And that less block in your deck allows you to scale more aggressively than you would in single player. And then just in general, communicate and support each other. So some specifics for each act. Act 1, you're really just having to take... You do have to take some middling damage in Act 1 to kill the early combats and survive. But you want to take some middling damage that keeps you open to scaling when possible. Like Molten Fist is a card that's okay in single player. It's exceptional in multiplayer because it opens you up to the vulnerable archetype, but it also just lets you keep vulnerable on the enemy forever. Like if someone can establish 3 vulnerable and you Molten Fist, you've basically just said they're vulnerable for the whole combat. So it does 10 damage, it solves your vulnerable, and then it opens you up to drafting Dominate or Vicious or Bully, so it's really cool. And then cards like Serpent Form, which are a little bit sketchy to take in single player early on, I think you can just take them and have your teammates try and find more ways to help you block, like they can find weak, strength drops. You take a hit for 1 turn and then you're strong enough to kind of handle the fights. Stuff like that is what you want to be doing in Act 1. Just a reminder to take elites. That's how you get scaling. Increased rare card chances makes it more likely you can take serpent forms and things like that. So nothing really changes from the fundamentals of pathing and stuff in multiplayer. And I would say Act 1's the hardest just because you don't have as much opportunity to take advantage of the group scaling. But debuffs in particular in Act 1 are so strong. Just take every debuff you can possibly find. Vulnerable, weak, just go for it. By Act 2, essentially you should just have debuffs off almost every single turn. This is your time to scale. By the Act 2 boss, you should have someone who's strong enough to do hundreds of damage on a single turn or over the course of the fight. But yeah, like if you're not having debuffs up by Act 2, something's wrong and you just need to draft them more aggressively. And then basically Act 3 is kind of a victory lap, just delete everything. You should have your scaling figured out, your debuffs figured out, and it should just be fun. So let's talk through some of the cards you should be taking. These are mostly multiplayer cards, but some single player cards. These are all like the S tier, just take, I would say almost as many of these cards as you possibly can. Debilitate in particular is so ridiculous, because Debilitate says weak is twice as effective, so enemies just do half damage when they're weakened. That's absurd. Dark Shackles, enemy loses 9 strength, same with Enfeebling Touch. This can just full block a fight. It's ridiculous. You can get to a position where someone with like Shared Fate and Malaise, you can just make the enemy do literally no damage. I've had a co-op run where I had 3 Shared Fate and a Debilitate, and then my teammate had a Malaise. And we just made the boss do no damage to us. And we had infinite time to scale. It was amazing. Piercing Wail, basically take all of these that you see. This is the best card in co-op probably. Silent in general is quite good. You get like Piercing Wail, Malaise. Necrobind is really good. You get flanking. So yeah, take these. And then Beacon of Hope. I don't know if this is quite S tier or A tier. It's a little bit different than the rest of these. But if you're a player who's taking a lot of block cards, I would put this in S tier. If you don't have block, then it's worse. Maybe it should belong in A. But anyway, these are like, if you see them, just take them. Debilitate in particular is busted. A tier, these are all cards that kind of underperform in single player, but in multiplayer, this lets you block for other people, especially Crush Under Plus, I think is a very underappreciated card. It's not amazing, but anything that's a bad Piercing Wail is still an excellent card. So having these types of effects on multiple players is awesome. Crush Under on its own can almost full block a combat from the Kin or the Decamillipede. You know, if you're getting attacked 6 times 2, that's 12 damage. This turns that into 2 by 2, which is 4 damage. So it would prevent 8 damage from that guy, and wait, no, it'd be 4 by 2. So it would prevent like 4 damage from one guy, 2 from all the others. So this could block for like 10 damage per player, essentially. Similarly, Monarch's Gaze, pretty unplayable in single player, but in multiplayer, you can just become the block guy. If you do this with like a Radiate, you can just stop enemies from doing damage. Same with Mangle, like, if the Queen's attacking for 5 by 9, you just play Mangle, and then nobody on your team takes damage. It's not just you. All of these cards are so good because they prevent damage to everyone. And then in terms of damage scaling, flanking and knockdown are just S tier because I play 1 card, and then if you have 2 or 3 other teammates, they're going to do double damage. So this is such a net damage for your whole team. These cards, just take as many as you can. My favorite build is like someone on the Silent just takes all of the Piercing Wails and flankings and Malaise, and then the run is basically solved. Like, you're just the best support character. Nobody takes damage and they do double damage. You can stack flanking so they do double or triple damage. It's kind of ridiculous. So take these cards, you'll have a much easier time. These cards are also quite good. All the cards that say all players get something are great. Like Huddle Up, all players draw 2 cards. I think Glimpse Beyond out of all of these is the best because Souls, the problem with Huddle Up is you have to communicate when this is happening and you can kind of mess with people's draws, or if their hand is full, it doesn't work. but Glimpse Beyond gives them the opportunity to play it on their own. So this one's definitely like the best of the best, but like giving everyone energy. If you think of the net benefit, if you're playing 3 players, this is 1 energy to add 6. If you think of 3 players, this is 1 energy to draw 6 cards. This is 2 energy to block for 36. These are all exceptional. These are quite good. Hammer Time in particular, if you're in a Forge build, is great. It's only A tier because it's situational, whereas you're basically never going to be disappointed to get these, but if you're not doing sword stuff, you're going to be disappointed to get Hammer Time, so that's the only reason I docked it. And then Legion of Bone is fine, like 2 energy, everyone summons 18. It's okay, but I think in terms of like cost benefit analysis, Rally is twice as much kind of total block for the turn. These are some cards that are, they don't like have that multiplayer scaling thing necessarily, but just as a single player yourself, they're really beneficial to take. Molten Fist Dominate, Bully, like this is just the easiest thing ever on Ironclad. And then tracking, the enemy should be weak the whole fight anyway, so this kind of just says you do double damage for the whole fight. And then Gang Up, first of all, this art is hilarious, but this is, you know, just fine. If everyone's attacking, this can do maybe 50 damage in a turn, so it's okay, but not amazing. So these cards, they're not going to like make or break the run, but they're just pretty good to pick up because of the way multiplayer goes. You know they're going to have vulnerable and weak, and you know the teammates are going to be attacking, so you can capitalize on it. These cards, they're not bad, but they're just regular cards. Like, because they're single targeted, you can't take advantage of scaling like you can with these types of cards, because Rally says all players gain 12 block. In a 4-player game, this generates 48 block for 2. All of these just target one specific player, so these cards are playable if you're in situations where people need this kind of stuff. Like if you have a Regent player that you need to give strength to, or like a Silent playing Shivs, you can play Coordinate, but just because they say multiplayer doesn't mean they're necessarily good. And I would say all these cards are just like, they're just fine. They're just regular cards. Do you want a super ultimate defend? You know, does someone need colorless cards? If so, it's fine. Otherwise, these cards are quite weak overall. These as well, they're not broken, but they're just good. Like 0 energy to give 3 energy is a good rate. It's kind of like an upgraded bloodletting. So you can't target yourself, which is kind of rough, but I would play this. Mimic is kind of nice because you can use kind of statistics like odds are someone else is going to have a lot of block. So this one does benefit a little bit from multi-scaling. And then Tag Team, again, this only affects the next attack someone plays. But I just want to mention this works across turns. So you can like Tag Team turn 1, and then they can wait and play their Meteor Strike turn 2 and get benefit that way. It's not an amazing card, but if someone has an attack they get a lot of benefit from, like a Fight Me or a Meteor Strike, then it could be okay. But you basically got to consider this like you're making a build as a team. So if someone has an attack that cares about it, take it. Otherwise, it's just kind of okay. And a random aside for the difference in these cards, if you're playing Demonic Shield, you need 2 very specific things to line up for this card to even be useful, which is you need to have high block on the Ironclad, which is pretty rare, and you need to have another teammate who has low block that needs block. Whereas with Mimic, all you need to have happen is any other teammate has high block, and this is good. So Mimic, I would say, is generally just quite good, whereas Demonic Shield, I would only do this if you have like Barricade or something. Even then, it's quite bad. Like, the best part about this is it's a 0-cost card that loses 1 health, so you can get like Rupture benefits, but otherwise I just wouldn't really worry about it. And so, yeah, these two I would just say, usually not that great. Demonic Shield and Tank. The math on Tank, this is essentially unplayable in 2-player. It's okay in 3-player, and it's fine in 4-player. The real reason why I think this card is quite bad is generally the Ironclad just doesn't want to block. The Ironclad wants to attack. And there are many, many better ways to get this sort of scaling. So in 4-player, I would consider it. 3-player would be hesitant, and I would just never take this in 2-player unless you've gone infinite, essentially. And sadly, also, these cards are quite cumbersome in co-op because communicating who is going to take the kill, or like having your teammates wait for you to dig through your deck so you can take the kill, is just really annoying. Like, these might be fine if you're playing competitive Play the Spire co-op, which I don't even know if that exists. But in every game I've played, we just kind of don't take these because it's just annoying to play with them, which is a little bit sad, but sort of the reality of playing with 4 other players, communicating, hey, I have this attack, wait for me to draw 6 cards before you take any other actions. It just slows down the gameplay so much. And lastly, I think another big tip is just the defect is the worst character in co-op. He just has very little synergy with other characters, and he just scales on his own. So if you need someone to scale, like, you can definitely win with the defect. But if you look at the list of top cards to take, we have Necrobinder, we have the Silent, we have the Regent. There's no Ironclad here, but then the Ironclad, in my opinion, is the best at scaling for damage. And the Ironclad scaling works with vulnerable, so you can be like the vulnerable stacker. So every other character has like a very clearly defined role that they can play in a team co-op game. Whereas the Regent, sadly, is just kind of there. Still playable, but if you're losing a lot and you're playing the Regent, try other characters, especially the Silent and Ironclad and Necrobinder is like my favorite group of 3, and you might have a better time. Hopefully this helps you out in multiplayer. If you liked it, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.